are you feeling now then, Siegfried? Worse.
The vet at the centre of one of Britain's most beloved dramas never existed, and the real man who inspired him carried on treating Yorkshire farm animals while his fictional version became famous in 60 countries. The story behind All Creatures Great and Small is warmer, stranger and darker than any episode the BBC ever broadcast. Fact 1. Herriot was never his real name.
Oh, Uncle Harriet, thank heavens I found you in. It's tricky. No, he's worse. Much worse.
Can you describe the symptoms, please?
James Herriot, the warm Yorkshire vet whose stories sold 60 million books, never existed. He was a legal fiction created out of professional necessity. The real man was Alf White, a veterinary surgeon practicing in Thirsk since 1940. When White began writing his memoirs, his professional body prohibited members from advertising. Publishing under his own name would have breached those rules. So White invented a pen name, taking it from Jim Herriot, a Scottish goalkeeper he had seen on television. The name suited the character he was creating far better than Alf White. The books became global bestsellers. By the time the BBC series began in 1978, James Herriot was one of the most recognisable names in British popular culture. Alf White remained largely unknown outside Thirsk. When the television series aired, White wrote to Christopher Timothy, who played him on screen, "You are the Herriot I wrote about." The man who had invented a fictional version of himself watched an actor become that invention and approved.
James, you're on call this evening, aren't you?
Yes.
Yes, well, I shouldn't be late.
Fact 2. The real Siegfried was even stranger.
What's wrong, Siegfried?
Wrong, everything is wrong. Oh, look at all this. Mess, confusion.
Siegfried Farnon was based on Donald Sinclair, Alf White's real professional partner. The television version, played by Robert Hardy with booming theatrical energy, was considered by those who knew the real man to be a significant understatement. According to White's own son, the real Sinclair was considerably more eccentric than the books or television ever showed. One documented example, Sinclair once discharged a shotgun during a dinner party to let his guests know it was time to leave. This did not make it into the show. Writer Michael Russell described the Siegfried character as capricious, cantankerous, whimsical, arbitrary, unreasonable, unpredictable, ill-tempered, extravagant, effusive and contradictory, yet the most loyal of friends. Robert Hardy made Siegfried one of British television's most memorable characters. What he never attempted to show was the full extent of what the real Sinclair was apparently like. Hardy received letters from viewers who became vets because of the series, inspired specifically by Siegfried. The man who fired shotguns at dinner parties had, filtered through fiction and a brilliant actor's performance, become an inspiration to a generation of veterinary students.
Come off it, Siegfried. You've heard Reeves lecture dozens of times.
I know, it's amazing, isn't it? Doesn't matter how often you hear the lecture, there's always something new to be discovered in it. Thank you.
Fact 3. Robert Hardy saved the location. The Yorkshire Dales that viewers associate so completely with All Creatures Great and Small were nearly not in the show at all. The original plan was to use Derbyshire's Peak District instead. Robert Hardy found out and refused to accept it. He told the producer he would walk out if they insisted on Derbyshire. Yorkshire was where the stories were set. Yorkshire was where they would film. Hardy won. The production relocated to the Yorkshire Dales, basing itself around Leyburn and using surrounding villages for location work. Most of the cast and crew were housed at local hotels. The village of Askrigg in Wensleydale became the primary stand-in for the fictional Darrowby. A house on Main Street served as the exterior of Skeldale House, now a bed and breakfast, still visited by fans. The Yorkshire Dales are now inseparable from the Herriot stories. That inseparability exists because one actor threatened to walk out and the production backed down.
Being all right?
Shattered. Like I've been run over by a steamroller.
I'm not surprised.
Fact 4. Christopher Timothy broke his leg.
Sorry I couldn't let you in. My hands were all covered in flour.
Oh, that's all right. My name's Harriet. James Harriet.
Oh, Siegfried Farnon's new assistant.
The production of All Creatures was structured in a way that created an unintentional continuity problem. Yorkshire location filming came first, shot on film. Studio filming at BBC Pebble Mill in Birmingham happened months later on videotape. Between the two, Christopher Timothy broke his leg. The injury significantly limited his mobility during the studio filming that followed. Anyone watching the first series attentively can spot this. In the outdoor Yorkshire scenes, Timothy moves freely. In the studio interiors filmed months later, his immobility is visible. In scenes meant to be contemporaneous with the outdoor footage, the production worked around the injury as best it could, but the continuity gap is simply there. Timothy completed the studio work with a broken leg. Once you know to look for it, the contrast is impossible to unsee. The energetic James Herriot bounding across Yorkshire farmyards, and the same man visibly struggling in the studio sequences.
So you finally asked her out?
I don't think I handled it very well, but yes, we have a date.
You don't seem very pleased about it, James.
Fact 5. The show ran out of books.
Miss Harbottle, if I say that I don't wish to speak to somebody...
You said nothing of the sort, Mr. Farnon. You said you were not here.
All Creatures Great and Small's first run, from 1978 to 1980, adapted Alf White's novels directly. By the end, the production had used essentially everything he had written. When filming on the 1985 Christmas special ended, Christopher Timothy was asked if that was the end. "I'm fairly certain it is, yes," he replied. "There's very, very little material left." What followed took 3 years of negotiation. Producer Bill Sellers persuaded White to allow writers to create entirely new stories using the existing characters. Original material, not adapted from the books, but approved by White himself. The revived series began in 1988, running until 1990 as a co-production with the BBC A&E and the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. 90 episodes in total, far more than the source novels could ever have supported. Without Sellers persuading a protective author to release his characters, the show would have ended in 1985. The 40 additional episodes and the careers shaped by them all depended on a negotiation most fans have never heard of. White's condition was that the new scripts must honour the spirit of the originals. The production agreed, and the later series are largely indistinguishable in tone from the first run, which is itself a remarkable achievement in original writing. If you're enjoying this, it would mean a lot if you subscribed. It helps us keep making videos like this one. Just hit that button and you'll never miss a new one.
we used to think we were pretty hard done by having to swat up on big horsework when we knew they were already on their way out.
Fact 6. Peter Davison became Doctor Who here.
I love these Sunday mornings in summer. Beautifully relaxing. Nothing much to do.
Peter Davison joined All Creatures as Tristan Farnon in 1978 and played the role through the original run and into the later series. Behind the scenes, working on the same BBC productions, was John Nathan Turner, the show's first production unit manager, simultaneously working in the same capacity on Doctor Who. When Nathan Turner became Doctor Who's producer, he needed a new lead actor. He had been watching Davison work for 3 years on All Creatures. In 1981, he cast Davison as the 5th Doctor. The connection runs even deeper. When Davison was cast, but before promotional photographs existed, the BBC needed an image of the new Doctor for the 1982 annual. They used a photograph of Davison as Tristan Farnon from All Creatures. For a brief period, the face of the 5th Doctor that the public knew was the face of a Yorkshire vet. Davison later said many fans still think of him as Tristan before they think of him as Doctor Who. The production manager who oversaw both shows ensured that the most beloved vet in British television became the most famous alien in British television.
It's too painful, Tris.
Really?
I just don't want to talk about it.
Rubbish. Of course you do. Now tell me what went wrong.
Just about everything.
But it was a perfectly planned and executed offensive.
Fact 7. The Darrowby that never existed. The fictional village of Darrowby was never filmed in a single place. It was assembled from multiple Yorkshire villages, cut together to create a coherent world that existed nowhere in reality. Askrigg in Wensleydale served as the primary Darrowby, providing the main street and the house that stood in for Skeldale House. Thirsk, where the real Alf White practiced his entire career, was never used. It had grown too large for the small town feel the producers wanted. The interior of Skeldale House was not filmed in Yorkshire at all. Those scenes were shot at BBC Pebble Mill Studios in Birmingham, months after the exterior location work. The house viewers believed in was a Birmingham studio dressed as a Yorkshire home. Parts of the original Skeldale House set are now on display at the World of James Herriot Museum in Thirsk, in the town where White actually worked, containing recreations of a fictional home filmed somewhere else entirely. The real place contains a replica of the fictional place filmed in Birmingham. This is the kind of layered unreality that the most convincing television always produces.
What an absolute stunner.
It's a matter of opinion. Good evening, Julia.
Fact 8. Timothy couldn't escape the role.
Oh, there you are, James. Mrs. Pumphrey was on the telephone. She wants you to see her pig.
Christopher Timothy played James Herriot for all 90 episodes, and the consequences were severe. After the series ended, he found it almost impossible to get other television work for 8 years. His agent was reduced to screaming down the phone at casting directors. "He's not a vet, he's a bloody actor." Timothy himself recalled the experience with a mixture of frustration and dark humour. The irony is that Timothy had been the BBC's solution to a typecasting problem. Simon Ward played Herriot in the 1975 film. John Alderton played him in the 1976 sequel. The BBC wanted someone fresh, not already associated with the role. Timothy was cast and then became associated with the role more completely than either of his predecessors. When Alf White wrote, "You are the Herriot I wrote about," that was a triumph. When casting directors refused to see past the surgery to the actor behind it, that was a trap. Timothy eventually worked steadily again, but he created one of British television's most complete character performances, and the completeness of it cost him 8 years.
Husk.
It's a parasite. It infects the cow's bronchial tubes and sets up bronchitis. I'm afraid they're pretty bad, Mrs. Dolby. I wish you'd called me sooner.
Fact 9. The animals ran the set.
This here is very wet.
Well, it will be.
Oh?
Water.
Pardon?
Water, surely you've heard of that. If they'll not get up, try pouring a bottle of cold water down the lug aisle.
All creatures great and small used real animals in genuinely realistic veterinary procedures. The animals were not trained performers. They were working farm animals, sometimes real patients of local vets brought to set for specific scenes. Christopher Timothy performed actual veterinary procedures on camera under the supervision of real vets. The scenes of Timothy with his arm inside a cow became a running joke on set. He performed it so many times in so many episodes that it became his most recognizable piece of business. The animals routinely extended filming schedules. Entire sequences had to be rescheduled when a cow, a horse, or a dog had its own ideas about how the scene should proceed. Alf White visited the set, and his approval of the procedures he watched was the most important validation the production could receive from the man whose real work they were depicting. The chaos was paradoxically the show's greatest asset. The unpredictability gave every scene a quality of genuine uncertainty that scripted drama rarely achieves. Viewers sensed that what they were watching was not entirely under control, because it wasn't. Fact 10. The real Herriot was never famous.
Mr. Harriet, wherever have you been?
That's my middle in a beck rescuing a cow.
Throughout the global success of the books and the television series, Alf White continued to practice as a veterinary surgeon in Thirsk. He did not give up his practice. He carried on treating Yorkshire farm animals while his fictional alter ego became famous across 60 countries. By the time the BBC run ended in 1990, the Herriot name was known in the United States, Australia, Japan, and across Europe. Alf White was not particularly known outside North Yorkshire. Robert Hardy recalled receiving letters from viewers who had become vets because of the show. The real vet whose life had inspired those viewers continued to work alongside real colleagues in a real practice, largely unbothered by the global attention directed at his fictional version. White died in February 1995. Timothy and Hardy attended a service of Thanksgiving at York Minster. The World of James Herriot Museum opened in Thirsk in 1999, in the actual house where Alf White had lived and worked. The museum displays original set pieces from the fictional Skeldale House, alongside exhibits about White's real work. The fictional vet and the real one occupy the same building, which is the closest they ever publicly came to being the same person.